I'm the odd one out because I'm not talking about film. I'm a film and media television broadcasting historian, but I'm not going to talk about film today. And but I asked James, is it okay to talk about radio? And he said yes, so here I am. But I guess the reason I wanted to be here is to kind of share knowledge, experience, kind of share questions around this whole topic of decolonizing the curriculum, the academy, film history, media, and film studies. So hopefully some of the things that I'm gonna sort of ask here or raise as questions could be relevant to the field of film studies. I want to start with the title and going back to it's been so I want to respond to all the things that have been said, not respond, but to start a conversation, but to what Lindsay said at the beginning, which is kind of think about the word decolonization or decolonizing. And funnily enough, you see my title is Decolonizing the BBC Archive, but the word decolonizing is nowhere here. And this is because this is the first slide I showed at one of the various outreach events we run as part of this project. Talking of outreach, meaning we went to Newham Community Centre, we went to various kind of places in London, we went to Liverpool, and we talked to members of the public about the project and the role of the BBC in this project and all that. So we decided at some point that coming out with that very grand word of decolonizing wouldn't be a good idea, and we tested it, or we kind of asked people, and they kind of either sort of said, what? Or were quite skeptical and quite in some ways resistant to kind of participate even, because in some cases the decolonizing, the term kind of had very negative connotations for them. But we thought actually, and thinking about more organically about what works on the ground for the things we do, we thought actually what is at the heart of this is those questions: whose story and whose voice. And this is a project that is coming to an end this August. But what I'll try and do very briefly is to connect it to the discussions that might be relevant to film studies or film history, and just to think more about archives, film and media archives, and thinking about employing methods that make those archives accessible and engaging. So digital humanities methods, for example. But also it's about how the project has employed or employs decolonizing methodologies and how that applies also to other film archives. And so this is a kind of a question about this kind of two pillars. On the one hand, the mass scale of digitization that is happening across the board in archives, the BFI, BBC, major organizations in universities, in all kinds of educational settings. Digitization of film materials, of media archives, and on the other is the debate on decolonizing film and media education and what those two as a pair, what are the opportunities and the challenges that they bring. So the project is funded by the British Academy, and it's not just me, it's also Sylvie Carlos, who she couldn't be here. Sylvie also, she's doing a PhD at King's College, and she's a radio producer. She's worked with the BBC for various podcasts. The key partner is the BBC Archive. They're facilitating access. They don't have any editorial control. You'll be glad to hear. They're a little bit anxious now as we're coming to the end with all the outputs, but that's a kind of another conversation we might have time to discuss later. Before I say a little bit about the project, I think what others have said is really key, is about the who and the why. who are we? Why are we doing this? And it's about actually, as again, coming back to what Eleni said, it's about getting our hands dirty, because it's not, I mean, in the sense that there's a material impact we want to think about, because this is a kind of principally a knowledge exchange project. There will be an academic output, there will be an article, but this is a project that has kind of knowledge exchange and kind of outreach at the heart of it. So the who and the why is something that we've been asked all the time. Why me as a Greek migrant standing here in front of you, or others where I do this, talking about the BBC archive and decolonising it? And just to say a little bit, I mean, Sylvie's not here to tell her story, but I can tell you mine very briefly. I came to this country in 2000 from Greece. I was born and grew up in Athens, and I came to study, to do a postgraduate degree for a year, just to stay for a year, and I'm still here. So I don't know how that happened, but more to the point, I think is why I'm doing this is kind of, I've been here for some time, and I've been sort of working and raising my family in London, and the capital, the London is a kind of, is what us Colin Prescott, the head of the Institute of Race Relations, told me once, is like, it's where diasporas meet. And I think this idea of different ethnic groups meeting culturally, politically, socially, is key to my outlook as a media historian, researcher, teacher, activist. And it is this kind of, I'm interested in this understanding how the diverse communities of this country can learn from each other and from their histories. And I believe that by creating those alliances and those synergies between groups that have often, for different reasons, been marginalized or underrepresented, that we can better understand the ideological workings of race, of colonialism, or the legacies of colonialism, and understand also how structural inequalities are. So I've been working in this field of film and media for a long time, film and media history, and I'm also, you know, if I'm gonna stay in this country, I think I've been here for a long time now, but I thought, you know, I really want to understand the big elephant in the room, the British Empire, the legacies of the British Empire. I cannot, you know, I want to understand that and interrogate it. This is when I went to the British Museum some time ago, around the time of the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you remember, the government at that point, and even before, they came up with a line to respond to what was happening. And the line was, particularly, that was the line given to cultural heritage organizations. Retain and explain, they told them. Retain, that's for the British Museum that has collections from all over the world, and explain. So if you have been to the British Museum recently, they have sort of done, they have a labels where, you know, you see what, they tell you what the exhibit is, but also where it comes from. And it's kind of very factual, or, you know, kind of reading history. But they, so they have tried to decolonize, they have been trying to decolonize their collections. But what they've, I remember I took a photo of that at the entrance. They have this Discover Our Shared Past. And I had a friend, British Nigerian, next to me, kind of thinking, who is sharing exactly here and how? But I mean, it's a very difficult job. But what I think the point I want to make is that when we started this project, we looked at, you know, we're looking at debates and bibliographies that happen across the board in film and media, but also in cultural heritage organizations and their policies and their kind of their struggles and challenges. And it's a highly politicized kind of arena, if you like. So this project explores the language of race, and we're using a digitized collection of radio news produced for BBC Home Service, what became Radio 4. And we have two key aims. One is to explore that database, and particularly to focus on the Black British experience and see how certain events, figures, have been reported from from the sort of 1945 up to the early 90s. So that's one thing. But in the last year of the project, this last year, we've been doing most of the outreach, which is to go out and invite different generations of the public, particularly from African and Caribbean backgrounds, to respond back, to speak back to the BBC's reporting. And the key output for that is, of this project, is to create a website that will be open, and it will be interactive, and we'll have a lot of this audio material and some of the news scripts and some contextualization. So this is the database. And we are mostly working with scripts, not audio. I mean, it's all scripts. We don't have any audio. And oops. And the broader objectives of the project is to write what we call a public history of the BBC, a history that kind of tries to think about not just the structure of the BBC, but also the impact the BBC and BBC Radio has had on this country and on diasporic communities. And to think very to interrogate the language as well, the language used by BBC journalists and news reporters. There are two key things that now those two pillars I mentioned at the beginning bring together for us. I think the two opportunities. Access and collaboration. So first thing is that with this digitized data archive, we can go out there and do things much more easily. We can facilitate access. We can give people access, the members of the public. We can go and do workshops and send links to people and ask teachers to use these links. And hopefully the learning packages will be doing that. So it will be an open archive that we are creating. And the second thing is that is the collaboration. And as it has been said, I mean, there is nothing. This is the dialogue and collaboration is so key to this project. These are some of the institutions we've been in dialogue with. We're building on the work they're doing. We are working with them. Some of them participating, either in podcasts or as advisory members. And so for me, it's been a transformative experience, to be honest. I mean, I've started with A and I'm now, I don't know, somewhere else. I mean, like with all projects, but this particular project has been, especially kind of mind-changing. And then it's about the fact that we want to think about the website. So it's not just a book. Of course, there'll be an academic output. And as we said, the written pieces are, of course, they have their own merits. But here we want to think about how we present this history and the responses that we'll have in the form of podcasts. And I think there's all kinds of opportunities that are opened because of the new methods that we can use, that the digitized archive create for us, or open up for us. So one is the way that we can map a whole field of history, media, film history, radio history, and we can put it out there and we can present it and we can visualize it with sort of various data or scripts or other forms of other research findings, where people can scroll down and do what you do on a website. But this gives that mapping that the digitized archive can give us. Is really kind of interesting because it kind of helps us think more differently about the spatial and temporal aspects of that history, of the radio history of the BBC, or of how people respond. So the other thing we want to do is to bring together with this website the work of other organizations or projects that do similar work in the form of linked data. It will be in a very basic way, in the sense that, for example, the Black Cultural Archives, they have been doing some work which is similar to this, in terms of like bringing together voices, different voices to speak back to archives, to understand, respond to histories. And they face all kinds of issues around digitization, you know, kind of funding issues. But we want to bring to kind of to have links and to create a dialogue with the work they are doing as well. It's the kind of the multi-archive approach, which is, I think, is really central to this whole decolonizing kind of work, this kind of work. And conceptually, going back to the revisiting, I think that you kind of mentioned, James, I think there has been lots of influences, and we've been kind of discussing and critiquing also different texts. But I just wanted to highlight one text that's been with us for like the beginning, by Linda Tway Smith, Decolonizing Methodologies, which is a text. I mean, now it's in third edition, a book in its third edition. It came out well before, you know, all this talk in academia about decolonizing this and the other. But it's been an inspiration, because I think particularly that concept of collage as a method and a theory, which is at the heart of this project, and it aims to, because what we're doing is collating themes around the UK race debate through the BBC radio news scripts, and then but we are also putting those scripts in dialogue with the public through a series of conversational podcasts, and those both approaches require a process of breaking up, reordering, rearranging the archive in order to create hopefully new meanings and access different alternative voices. So the practice-based outputs of the project, the website and the podcasts, I think underline this act of making, of putting together, which forms a key part of collage work. And particularly the conversational podcasts offer for us an encounter with the archive where the public kind of completely reinvents and fills gaps and reinvents it and kind of rethinks that history. And, you know, of course, speaking back is in the same tradition of writing back, of talking back, that characterizes much of the post-colonial and anti-colonial literature. There is a lot of different others, you know, kind of, we've been looking at a lot at kind of literature on archives, archiving activism and activist archiving is another key kind of relationship we want to look at. How we, you know, we collect this, we're collecting these conversations of, you know, the public speaking back. What are these resources then about how are we gonna put them out, and how are we gonna start a different way of talking about the BBC's history by doing that? Yeah, I mean, we can unpack that later if we have time. There's another thing we've been thinking more recently, yes, about film studies and how film studies also, I mean, you know, it's not like it's a completely different field, but there's a certain body of work around the use of film archive, repurposing film archive, which has been quite inspirational for us, particularly Catherine Russell's work on archivology and William Wee's on recycled images and Jamie Barron's on the archive effect, which are all of them come, you know, they are basically about working with found footage and how you create video essays or essay films by putting different footage or different film archives together, or bits of film archives, or bits of films. And it's that process again of reordering, rearranging, breaking up the compilation films, the appropriation and the collage, those methods that kind of we want to think more about in terms of what we do with the radio archive we're researching. And finally, you know, the last 2 years, well, working on this project, I mean, I mean, apart from the fact that it's been a very emotional and very powerful experience for a lot of us, is that you see also the big inequalities in this field. So we're talking about digitization and massive digitization projects. But where do these projects take place? They take place at the big, well-resourced institutions. The BFI, the BBC. The BBC have an amazing, I mean, they still, I mean, not as much as they had, but they can go and digitize the whole of the Radio 4 News, you know, output. The Black Cultural Archives that, as I say, we've been working with, they are completely out of this. They've been struggling. They have just had some funding on that front, but you know, they don't have that access to that funding, or not so easily. And that has huge implications in terms of what the outputs they can create, what they can bring out there, how they can engage their public. So we wanted to think more about that, and also to think about the fragility of the archive itself, whether it's digital or not. So more like questions rather than, oops, nope, that's not me. Yeah, rather than findings. And yeah, thank you very much.